Imelda Hay is the Michigan State Coordinator for the Student Basic Needs Coalition and a student at Grand Valley State University, where she is pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Public and Nonprofit Administration. As a McNair Scholar, she is deeply committed to understanding and addressing basic needs and security among college students. Her work in equitable access to higher education began with her fellowship with the Center for College Access and Success, where she gained experience in policy advocacy. During her fellowship, she contributed to an issue briefing focused on centralizing resources for college students, a publication released in October that helped highlight systemic barriers and potential policy solutions. Imelda hopes to earn her master's in public administration and continue pursuing a more equitable future for college students in the state of Michigan. Welcome, Imelda. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to dive into some questions. To start us off, can you share a little bit more about what brought you into basic needs advocacy in the first place? What experiences, either personal or academic, sparked your interest in ensuring students have equitable access to higher education?
Yeah, I when I first got to college, I sort of had like the rude awakening of realizing how difficult it is to get your basic needs met when you are not surrounded by your community. So yeah, I first went to school in Virginia out of high school, and through that experience, had some just ups and downs with like access to food. And after moving to, so I moved to Grand Rapids a couple years ago, and I did a cohort at the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, and that was basically a program to sort of give people experience going to different professional spaces to figure out like what to do after in like the post-secondary period where you're not necessarily gaining your education in a formal setting. And through that, was exposed to sort of their mission of securing economic stability and affluence for communities that have been historically um, underrepresented by that, like not targeted by programs like that. So through that, I sort of realized that I really do like this work. There's a lot to be done with it. There's a lot of areas that you can go into and like things you can be passionate about and still pursue this industry. So, um, yeah.
Awesome. And I know we were talking a little bit before this interview, and you mentioned that you are also a transfer student. And I know you just mentioned that as well. How has navigating that transition shaped your perspective when it comes to student success and basic needs as well? Did you learn anything from your experience in being a transfer student?
Yeah, that was also something that was pretty central to like my focus on, or just my personal awareness of basic needs, security and like the need for that, and just like this work in general. I had a mentor through my fellowship with TICAS that was just very like transparent and honest with us about her journey through higher ed and how difficult it was for her like as a black woman and as someone who didn't come from like a financially stable background and having to navigate paying for school and stuff. And so sort of like through that mentor I felt more empowered to be more of an advocate for myself because yeah, I transferred. So I first went to school out of high school to a school called Shenandoah in Virginia, and then when COVID hit, moved back to Michigan, and then went to Michigan State for a while, and then transferred to Grand Rapids Community College, and now I'm at Grand Valley. So just from navigating that experience and going from, I used to be a music major, so going from like majoring in performance to a different field completely was pretty difficult, I would say, to like come out of with as much as possible, because a lot of it is just you yourself as a student having to navigate all these different um, channels of like, okay, I got to figure out which credits transfer, I have to figure out how to pay for school, what funding opportunities are available to me. So a lot of that experience was like really exhausting. And through like my work with Tikas, I was also able to sort of channel that personal experience into something with our research, because our focus during the fellowship was like centralizing the resources that are available to students in Michigan, which is something that I feel like we're still, as a state, like there's a lot of different nonprofits and organizations that are trying to do that. And as much as we're like super connected to the internet and each other, it's actually quite difficult to figure out what works for students and not have them spending time they could be working or studying figuring out a website basically. So a lot of the stuff that like I experienced as a transfer student, I was able to use to like inform that work, but there is still a lot to be done in that area.
Yeah, I can only imagine when you mentioned like all the schools that you transferred to, I can only imagine like, having to repeat that process of trying to figure out all the resources and get adjusted to those campuses. But I also feel like, you know, it allows you to kind of be connected to multiple campuses now. I imagine that you met people from all the different colleges that you attended and were able to kind of build a network in that way. And with that, I mean, I know you serve currently as the Michigan State Coordinator for SBNC while studying public and nonprofit administration at Grand Valley State University. So you're always kind of talking with people from different universities and things like that. So what does your work in this role look like? And are you applying concepts from your studies to this role?
Yeah, actually, when I first started, August, my supervisor, my boss, had us like list the different like channels of people we're connected to and skill like special skills we have. So I guess I didn't consider when I first started working like, oh, this major will help me in my work here, which I don't know why that didn't compute. It's a nonprofit, but um, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff through my work that I'm like connecting to school and vice versa. Like a lot of ways that the work intersects with what I'm talking about in classes. And yeah, like my role right now, a lot of what we're working on is implementing Navi on campuses, so our SNAP eligibility navigator, and trying to get that to as many students as possible. I'm mostly directing my energy towards GV, but I do want to start expanding more to more places in Michigan, just so we can build on that network of people. I mean, even when you mentioned that, I was like, I do know a lot of people from MSU. Like, I don't know, I haven't leaned into that more, but um, there is like a lot of different communities in Michigan and students where I feel like there's like the side of it where we want students who are eligible or who are experiencing basic needs insecurity to use these resources, but then on the other side, like finding other student advocates and people who um, care about advocating for their peers who can join us to sort of like join this movement. So that's a lot of the work now. And then meeting with other people who are doing similar things. Like it's a Great Lakes cohort. So the other Great Lakes coordinators, it's like good to get ideas from them But yeah, there's a lot of like the public and nonprofit stuff that I see in my classes where I'm like, okay, or just like the things to be aware of, I guess, um like through this major, it's like pretty new to study nonprofits in college, so I feel like a lot of what I'm learning is about what we're not doing or things that like in the ideal world, in the perfect world, we would be doing this. So it's good to like be able to sort of be conscious of that when doing my work with SBNC, just to, I guess, strive for like the best possible outcome, or best practice, even if it's not completely perfect.
Oh yeah, I had a similar experience in college too. I worked at my campus food pantry at the same time when I was getting my Master of Public Administration, and I would always like just see similarities from like concepts that we were learning in kind of what we were doing in our work at the university since it operated and was essentially a nonprofit as well. But you know, beyond your involvement with SBNC, I know you're also a McNair Scholar, which has allowed you to, dive deeper into understanding student basic needs and security. So can you share a little bit more about your experience with McNair and how it's connected to your work?
Yeah, honestly, I don't have a ton to share about McNair because I was recently accepted into the program. So what the reason why I wanted to apply was I went to a research fair. I believe it was a research fair at GVSU, just walking around campus, and I saw a bunch of people in a room, and I was like, okay. And then through that, met the people from the GVSU McNair program, and they told me about what it is. Like, basically, underrepresented students can, in your field, can get funding and resources to do research. So that is a program that lasts 15 months, but the like research intensive part of it is over the summer. And part of the reason I wanted to apply for that was because of the like grad school aspect, like kind of helping students figure out applying for grad school, what that looks like, what research looks like. In general, like part of my wanting to go to school is just to be a better researcher because I feel like the people I look up to can like pretty quickly put out lit reviews or studies or whatever, and I just wanted to like exercise that muscle more. So for that, I'm still exploring like what I want to research specifically, but I know like a topic that has interested me, especially since moving to Grand Rapids, is like the efforts that cities are making to um, target homelessness and like um, yeah, figuring out solutions to that, or how cities even look at that. So um, there's a lot of like stuff that I'm interested in as far as research, but I also am still figuring out like, do I want to just do a lit review over this 12-week program and then continue the research after that? Because they were saying too, like, there's a lot of stuff that people do with McNair, but it's pretty flexible as far as like the content of what you're doing and also the duration of like if you continue that research after the program or if it just kind of stays within that time period.
Oh, that's cool. I had heard of McNair, but I don't think I ever really like knew exactly what it was for, like who it was for. So that's very interesting to know. So yeah, you'll have to keep us updated on what you decide as your research interests develop. But moving on, I know that your fellowship with the Center for College Access and Success gave you early experience with policy advocacy as well, including contributing to the issue briefing that I mentioned in your bio. So, can you just share a little bit about what you learned from that experience and what barriers or solutions stood out to you the most?
Yeah, okay. So I would say something about that experience that was that I enjoyed was I was able to go to um, the year before me. So I did it 2024 to July 2025. So the year before me, the 2023 fellows had their end of the year presentation, and I really enjoyed that experience because I got to see what they were able to achieve in a year, which was pretty significant. They got a state scholarship for um, non tuition costs on, and I think that was the first federally fund or like state scholarship that funded like non-tuition costs, and they were able to advocate for that and actually get it in the budget within like a year, which was like inspiring to me because I didn't think that could happen that quickly. And I got to meet some of the other members of the cohort that were going to be joining me, so that was really cool. And yeah, some of the policy recommendations we had, a lot of it was surrounding like language and just like simplification of things that already existed. There's a lot of like, I mean, there's just a lot of things that are not user friendly. Like you'll click on a link to a page that links you to the page you were just on, or something as simple as that, where it's like, this didn't, like, it's just basically breaking it down in a way that tries to take the burden off of students and the time burden mostly of like just going through information that they don't need to go through. Um, and then, yeah, there were, I'm trying to think of our other policy recommendations. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was just like getting rid of language barriers, making it easier to read, making FAFSA, like communicating more about that. Um, I think in Michigan they were trying to get like a FAFSA requirement for high school students, like making it a requirement to fill out just so students aren't being missed, but then removing certain barriers to it that make people hesitant about filling it out because there's like identifying factors that people might not be comfortable with. So, um, yeah, just trying to like lessen the barriers students are facing and also make people who are not, because a lot of it too I think really falls on like the people making these decisions are not close to their graduation date. Like they graduated a long time ago, they don't really understand what it's like to be a student right now. And it's like understandable. Like I don't think a lot of people who graduated recently probably don't know what it's like to be a student right now because of all the things happening. There's a lot of shifts, but overall, I think the goal of that briefing was really to give people more context. So without maybe going through 3 hours of trying to figure out the Michigan transfer website, you can just read this and understand like where we're coming from. And hopefully those people could who are making decisions can have that like wake up call to maybe question, is this easy for students to do? Because I think something like accessing a website would seem like it's easy for Gen Z people or whatever, but a lot of this stuff is like super convoluted. So just trying to like kind of take a layer of that away from students.
Yeah, that can be super frustrating. As you were speaking, I was thinking like connecting it to public administration concepts like red tape. Like that is, super challenging when, you have all of these different complex rules and processes and these inactive links that just make getting a simple task done really hard. So I think sometimes the best thing that you can do in a case scenario is not always add or invent new resources, but just make sure that the ones that do exist are like streamlined and you can find them in an easy place. I think that gets overlooked sometimes because people want to rush to make something new, but it's like we have a lot of resources that students and others can take advantage of, but sometimes they just don't know where to find that or how to find it. So that's definitely important. Um, but my last question for you is just looking ahead. I know that you mentioned that you plan to pursue a master's in public administration. How do you kind of see your work and studies evolving as you just continue to progress through your studies and continue advocating for a more equitable future for Michigan students? Where do you kind of, see your work and studies leading you?
I would definitely like to um I mean, I think just knowing myself personally, I'm like, it's going to be probably pretty chaotic. Because, like, even with when I started thinking about McNair, I was like, I want to write a book. And now I'm like, I don't know why that was my thought. Like maybe.
Hey, you never know. You could write a book one day.
um, so yeah, I guess I say that to just express that my interests are largely based on what I'm being exposed to in that moment. Like, I had read a book by Anna Clark about the Flint water crisis, and I was like, this was so, like, I just gained so much from reading that in such a short period that I was like, oh, books are the way to go to relay information. But then it's like, okay, that's largely just based off of the fact that that's the most recent thing you did. So, but more in that vein, I have like more interest now, I would say, towards like housing insecurity, like insecurity, if that makes sense. Like, especially through reading about this book or reading this book about Flint, like a lot of these issues, like lead, for example, I'm like, this is like such a prominent thing, but I feel like it's still largely on like individuals to like figure things out, and there's so much trust put into these institutions like the government, and I want people to be able to trust the government, so I want to work to like make these institutions more trustworthy or give citizens the knowledge they need to like, and not make it difficult for people to access information that affects them on a day-to-day basis. So I would say just things relating to environment, housing insecurity, and always keeping in mind college students at the forefront, because I think if we're working with populations of people that are actively trying to improve themselves, it's important to honor that by making it easy for them to succeed in their field. Like, it's already hard enough to get a bachelor's degree. You don't need to like do that plus worrying about where you're gonna get your next meal or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, Imelda, thank you so much for taking the time to join me and just sharing more about your work and your vision for supporting students across Michigan. I'm grateful that you took the time to be a part of this conversation today, and I look forward to keeping up with your work. I'm very much like you, like my interests and things evolve with the current moment, so I'm excited to see how that unfolds for you as you continue to progress through your undergraduate experience and also just continue to be involved in different work and professional experiences.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Taylor.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of the Student Impact Report. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at SBNC_USA. And you can also catch our episodes on Spotify and YouTube. See you next time.